on Monday night, but we weren't going to leave you alone all week. It's time for the Smash. This is the Smash right here, the Wednesday edition of it on Warchant TV. He's Michael Langston, senior portal analyst, senior recruiting analyst for Warchant.com. My name is Tom Lang. Tonight's program is presented, as always, by State Farm agent Russ Forrest. And tonight you can expect 20 to 25 minutes of portal talk because the portal is open, everybody. And then we're going to have Ira Schafel, managing editor of Warchant.com, join us in about that much time, 20, 25 minutes, and we'll get into some Florida State football discussion. First up, Michael, good evening. How's the phone doing so far in the first day of the portal being open?
Up and down, a lot of charging. Certainly a lot of activity. It started midnight last night, and it's gonna get even heavier once we start seeing visits set up and stuff like that. But it's pretty active. I think this 9-10 days is gonna be pretty consistent as far as having stuff consistently, or it's nuggets or stories. So I think certainly there's gonna be some good activity for FSU.
Florida State on the outgoing front already has three names that have been listed in the portal. Remember to stay tuned to warchant.com and all of our feeds for all that news as it develops. But Trevor Jackson, quarterback who just fell down the depth chart. Kevin Sperry, as a true freshman, too good. He enters his name in the transfer portal. Offensive lineman Jalen Early, who was part of that heralded 2022 Florida State offensive line class. He's the last one that is out the door. And then Jordan Scott. We hardly knew ye, Jordan Scott, JUCO wide receiver, who was here for a brief period of time in the spring, is out the door. Michael, a general question here. Any surprises for you on that list? And then of those position groups, quarterback, offensive line, receiver, you think Florida State might be active on the incoming front for any of those positions?
Yeah, I would say the first question, mild surprise with Jalen Early. That's really the only one. Outside of the other ones, no, because Trevor was probably fourth string, and I think a lot of that led to what we've heard about Kevin Sperry and how he's done as a true freshman. If he's already passed him, then it makes a lot of sense to go somewhere where you can find a place. And then wide receiver Jordan Scott, didn't really hear a lot about his name in the spring as far as from my contacts. So not totally shocking there. Obviously, you don't expect it to be that quickly, happening, but at the same time, he's a JUCO guy. You want to make sure you're into the right place. So I think out of those is a mild surprise with Jalen Early. But as far as pursuit of a position, I don't think they'll really do anything with quarterback. I think they pretty much feel good about the three. They signed a walk on late that they could get in there and squeeze in there is the fourth string, and then I think the only position in there I would say offensive line. I could see them, they're already going to go to the portal, so I could see them going after a tackle or a guard type. I don't see them going after a center. I think a lot of people have brought up, certain names, but if they're a center, just feels like Luke Pettibon is doing fairly good. So that doesn't seem like one. But receiver, I can see them adding another piece in there if a guy fits right and he's kind of fits that system. Maybe a 500-yard, 300-yard type of receiver come in there, very productive. That kind of they can mix in with the current receiver group they have. I think that's probably it. But I think though really it's the offensive line and the receiver. I think those are the focus, but I don't think quarterback. I think they're pretty comfortable with what they have.
Well, they're in kind of a weird spot right now, too, because they've got two more spring practices to go. They practice tomorrow night. They practice Saturday. I think that's supposed to still be a scrimmage. We get the
Yeah.
coordinators around lunchtime, so if it's a scrimmage, again, one final showing for maybe some guys that are on the bubble of the roster, whether or not they're going to crack a two deep or go into summer workouts feeling good about themselves. So Florida State already has three guys entering the portal. Portal extends till next week. But Michael, they're in this weird place where maybe the coaches are going to have some conversations with players after camp is over. I would
Right.
imagine we'd see more guys enter the portal. But what do you think?
Yeah, it's potentially you could see some more. I'm not going to say a number. I'm going to say a few more, a couple more, several more. I don't know, but you would think there'll be at least something as far as coming out of that, because you have certain positions that there's certain guys like I don't list the guys, but there's certain places of positions that probably are not in the good place as far as kind of where they sit on the depth chart. So that might be something in the spring that when they have these exit meetings, you get into that, and that kind of it's going to be interesting because that complicates things in that 9-10 day window where you're going to have to act fast. And so that's why I say this movement's going to be fairly consistent. But yeah, I think we'll start to know by this weekend if there's anybody else that is going to depart. It's going to happen. But they're definitely going to be very active.
Well, and that's the thing too, is it's nothing simple in this day and age. You have the house settlement that's on hold for the moment. It is probably going to go down, but that changes the market for the now, Michael, in terms of how much kids can ask for, what schools are going to have to pay.
Yep.
Maybe if a kid thought, well, if the house settlement goes through, I wouldn't have a whole bunch of schools interested in me. But if it's going to be held off, then I could jump in now, make more money. I'm sure coaches' heads are spinning at some realities here that they weren't anticipating because the settlement is taking extra time.
Yeah, and then you have new things like the Tennessee quarterback that did what he did. That kind of brings more dynamics in there. It doesn't matter what the position is, and good for college football that a lot of people have come out and said, "Look, this is where we pump the brakes. Like, okay, this is enough where you're not showing up for practice and you're sitting out like you're a free agent in the NFL, football league." So I think that part's good, but that's another dynamic that's added to this stuff. I will say, going this before we start, the safety and the I would say the edge position, those are definitely places that I feel like FSU will be aggressive. When I say aggressive, that includes NIL and just how they recruit them. So I think those are two positions that they definitely are strongly gonna want to hit on. If they feel like they need some pieces there. The defensive line, Jason Jennings is kind of banged up, so you gotta have another guy that you feel comfortable with. So I think they would like to add one or two there, and then certainly with the safety position, I think the same as well. So those are two. If I'm picking two positions, those are the two positions I think they're going to really put a lot of effort into.
Yeah, I feel like the amount of activity that we see on the defensive line, specifically at edge, kind of would give you a window into how they feel about Jason Jenkins' recovery because he missed spring.
Yeah.
If they're hyper aggressive bringing kids in there, I'm just reading the tea leaves. They love that kid, and I'm pretty sure
Yes.
NIL wise they invested in that kid. So
Yep.
if they go grab another one, that would be in addition to James Williams and some of the other kids
Yeah.
that they brought in as combo defensive linemen. That tells you what they think about what they need for the fall. But before we get into D lines or your questions, because if you have them right now, about 10 minutes to get questions in for Michael. Safety. There is a high-profile member of the secondary from an in-state school that is now in the portal. I'd like you to tell us who he is, Michael, and whether Florida State has a real shot at this particular player.
Yes, that player is one that I know very well because I went over there and covered his announcement where he announced for another school, not FSU, because I just happened to be there. But Zaquan Patterson from Miami, actually he's from Chaminade High School. That's the same school as Edmund Joseph. They're really close. He's also really close with Conrad Hussey, who's also on the FSU team. There's certainly a need at safety. Evan Cooper kind of swings into this picture because he's really good in South Florida. So he's a very good South Florida recruiter. Certainly a safety is a position that they're coveting. I have heard to intel that that's a guy that I do expect in a pursuit. They're certainly, like I said, they're going to aggressively recruit these two positions. I think that's one that, and he's not the only one. There's several other prospects I think that they're keeping an eye on, but Zaquan has been the main one where you feel like the dots connect as far as FSU. Certainly there'll be competition, probably SEC school, Big Ten schools, maybe some other ACC schools that sprinkle in there, but I think overall this is a guy that kind of fits everything you're looking for. I think he played in 22 games. He's not you don't need a guy that needs to be kind of a flat outright crazy stud, but you need somebody that you feel comfortable putting in there, gives you a lot of depth, and certainly out of high school he's one of just a playmaker that did everything. He had a trade of all tools, forced fumbles, got sacks, got picks. So a guy that you feel like would fit that Tony White system as far as safety, and definitely one where if everything checks out and they do background and do all this stuff and everything clicks, that's a guy I think you could see on campus soon for FSU to maybe get a visit.
Now, this is the interesting part, too. Yeah, kids still do take visits for the spring window, even though it's condensed relative to the winter window, which goes longer.
Yeah.
You could see commitments on the spot. You could see visits, but chances are Florida State's trying to get these kids on campus to further vet them. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, especially one like this. Yeah, Cooper knows him, but Zaquan probably wants to be around Tony White. He wants to see kind of what their plans are. Certainly, you do your NAL pitch off of campus and stuff like that. So I'm sure a lot of different angles of why you would want them on campus. So certainly, there's plenty of, and I think most of them you will see on campus. The FSU, because FSU is very selective of who they go after and push for, and most of the guys they get, are on campus, or they just known for a while that, hey, I'm going to FSU. It's just a matter of just talking and on the phone with the staff and getting things straight. But that's one where I could see, a visit. I don't think a visit's necessary because Zaquan's been here before, but I think that's one where you might want to spend a little time with Tony White.
Makes sense to me.
Yep.
Everybody in the chat, settle down, children. Everybody, it's going to be okay. Garrett, PCL, a question here from a Warchant Premier member. Thank you, Garrett, for being a Warchant Premier member. Over under 10 more players entering the transfer portal. Oh, my. That is a large number because that would be 13 outgoing Seminoles. Michael, if you were just going to set a number, not with intel, just that the people could use as a barometer, you think it's closer to 2 or 3 more, 5 more, 10 more? What do you think in terms of the discussions Florida State might be having, and or maybe other schools trying to, court people from Florida State to head out into the portal?
Yeah, I'd say 3 to 4 for me. 3 or 4 more. I just can't see. I think their roster is pretty. I think they know what they have, and the guys that aren't there at the top of the depth chart, I think you see some movement. I just can't see it going beyond 3 or 4. That doesn't mean it won't. I don't cover the team, guys. I'm not out there every day, so I don't know all these guys. But just piecing the puzzle together, that's what I would say.
Makes sense to me. Brett Taylor asks in the chat, can we discuss how FSU and any other team goes from 85 to 105? Give 20 walk-ons a scholarship or get 20 guys in the portal or some combination, which I would think, and Michael, I'll lean on you for this one, I would think it'd be some combination, but there's no limit on year-to-year high school ads right now. So I would just think
Right.
they would take more high school commits as this thing phases in over the next year.
I would think so because you usually only have there's 6 or 7 really solid walk-ons that you feel like, okay, these guys have a chance. There's probably more than that, but I'm just saying that's the number. So yeah, I think high school guys you would just add up to that more in high school than you would portal because there's such an uncertainty with that. Where high school you have time to develop and all that stuff. So I think overall, yeah, I would say the high school part you would add there to kind of equal out that 105 for the most part.
Justin asks in the chat, any transfer names for a proven wide receiver one? I haven't seen anyone. That would also be extremely expensive right now. That would be
Yeah.
really expensive. But Michael, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think and that's the thing, I don't think you need a proven wide receiver one. I just think you need a wide receiver two or wide receiver three that equals out that depth. I think people forget the guy that really shined that started coming up last year, been playing baseball, BJ Gibson. That's another one that will be in the picture that people, I think, forgetting. I've heard a lot of good things about Elijah Moore. We know about Squirrel White. We know about Deuce Robinson. I think Wayne McCoy's been there, so he's certainly going to have experience. There's a lot of guys that I don't think you want to go too far because then you doing that, and then that might start affecting guys that are already supplanted where they're at on the team. So I don't think you have to have a wide receiver one. Plus, it's going to be pretty pricey to go after a wide receiver one. I'm cool with a wide receiver two. Just talk about a guy. It's like maybe 500 yards, maybe 7 touchdowns, something like that. I think that will fit kind of what they need. But certainly you would take it if there's a top guy that really is connected with FSU. You have all the dots connected to school. There's a tie there. There's a connection with the coach or something. Yeah, you jump on that in a heartbeat. But I think it's really they just need a productive guy that's kind of really finish out that wide receiver group.
This is where I wish that the numbers were for people's consumption. I'm not thinking that Jordan Scott made a lot of money out of the portal, but I would wonder what Florida State would save if he re-entered. Because if you're watching your NFL team or your favorite franchise, well, you'd save a couple $100,000 there. All right, let's see if we can reinvest it back into the portal. But to your point, I would agree. If you're going to go get a receiver, you would go down the line because you have your large, bulky outside guy, you have your slot receiver, and then you have Jalen Lucas is going to line up everywhere. And then you have some young guys that you feel pretty good about. So you don't want to, break the bank there. Kurt asks in the chat, Tom, Michael, do you have feelings on what positions we may see have those defections? Meaning what positions would depart Florida State? Kurt, I'm going to start here. I don't have intel specifically, just looking at the depth chart, and we tried to do this last year, and really nobody left. So we'll see if it changes this year. There's a lot of running backs. There's a lot of wide receivers. Gus doesn't exactly play and rotate a bunch of guys at either of those two positions. There might be an O lineman or two, but they're getting thin quick there. On the defensive side, I don't know, maybe a member or two of the secondary. Michael, any thoughts on these positions?
No, I think I think you hit on it pretty well, Tom. It's kind of there's not really a position we know that that you feel like there is going to deplete them. I think, like I've said from the start, I think they know what their makeup of their depth chart is going to be, or they're close to it. So I don't think there's going to be one that just destroys the roster, where somebody just leaves out of the blue that is a significant piece of what they're doing and just leaves. I don't see that. And then my other point with receiver I throw in is like Jaden Scott went really quick. So that makes me wonder if they might have somebody in mind, that is in the port already that they feel like it's like, look, we can have Jaden Scott and he might do some things, but we get this guy. This guy's going to round out our receiver group. I'm not saying it's happened. I haven't heard intel that it does, but that's really rare. What happened? Him leaving a guy just got here and then leaving in the spring. So that's something I'm checking on and looking into contacts and trying to see if there's a guy or guys in mind that they're doing. But I think Tom, you really covered it on the positions. That's really almost impossible to say, but I don't think it's going to be something that depletes the roster.
Yeah, I agree here. I mean, there might be a surprise or two because, again, people might be aggressive if the house settlement's not in effect and try to poach somebody from another roster. We know that it's a dirty business. But, we all look at the roster and we say, there's a lot of guys at this position. On the incoming front, Michael, James wants to know what's the most needed position as of now in terms of just one position. And let's just say you could only add one player and they're a good player. Where would you look to first?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would go at that. I want a top safety. I want a guy that controls the back end. I mean, I think that's they have the starters, but I think they need somebody that can kind of finish off that. I'm sure another edge guy would be great, but we don't know just injury wise they seem to be fairly good except for Jason. But I think overall just I think safety for me because I think that changes the way your team is in when your team's built. When you have a top safety or a talented safety that you bring into the fold, that really changes what a lot you can do. And we've already seen just on this, even though a short look we have, the look of what they're doing with their safeties, which is a lot. There's a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of freedom in what they do. So I think for me, man, you give me a top safety, yeah, I'm jumping.
Let's see. Last question. Oh, all right. This is a recruiting question. This is from Adam. All right. Thank you, Adam. We appreciate it. Hey, Michael, what's the latest in the quarterback situation for 2026 2027? Or are we living in the portal again next year if Sperry needs more time to develop? What do you think that they're doing with their quarterback board?
Yeah, so they got three legit scholarship guys. As I said, Kevin Sperry's a name I've heard he's done really good. So certainly they're happy with him. They're happy with what they've seen out of Brock, and we know what Tommy brings. So I think for 2026, we're waiting to see if Landon Duckworth actually visits a 4-star. Ole Miss just got a recent commit, so it makes you raise my eyebrows when that happened. That maybe that one's not as much of a lock. I've heard he visits South Carolina. I've heard April 19th is the visit weekend. That if you're looking for him to visit, that's probably when he will visit. And if he doesn't, you can just move on because he's had all spring to get there. And if he's not there on April 19th, it's pretty much a clear indication that just ain't happening. But I think Jaden O'Neal, I think your own Matt Lasser, broke earlier today that Jaden O'Neal has scheduled a FSU official visit June 15th to June 17th. I think that's a big deal. I wrote an article and a piece. Should be going out soon. I did like probably 3 days ago, and it's basically about all the guys that have trending up, and he was one of the guys that I put in the trending up because he visited. There's a lot of connections with FSU. I think Jaden O'Neal is certainly the most realistic guy, and he's a guy they previously recruited. So I think they know him really well, and they know they feel like it's mainly just getting him around the offense. And not to be a dead horse, and we've said this many times, but Bo Bentley, another 4-star quarterback, is likely to commit to Oklahoma. That could open up a spot where Jaden, opens things up, and I think FSU is certainly a prime candidate to jump if that happens.
So the last thing, it'll come from me because I'm seeing a couple questions in the chat right now about specific players from schools, like the North Carolina defensive kid, or a kid from
Yeah.
Syracuse, or a kid from Auburn. Just names that have caught your attention right now. You mentioned Patterson from Miami, but any other names that have your attention as we sit here right now, knowing that this is extremely fluid?
Yeah, TJ Bush is one that's I'm really high on from Liberty. He's a guy that is about as productive as you get an edge. He's kind of exactly what I'd want as far as a fix there. He's certainly a guy that's going to be very popular. I think he really jumps out to me. Boise State defensive end is another one. I'm drawing a blank on his name, but he's in there. I mentioned him on the board. I put him on the PRB, but he's a guy that I do feel there's going to be interest there, from what I'm hearing. So that those are two that certainly are on my radar. They're pretty high, and I mentioned, even though it's not a position of need, um, like FSU in December for the fall window, really, went after Rasul, the running back out of Utah State, that ended up at South Carolina. Don't be surprised if the FSU, if there's somebody that just jumped out at them at running back. I think Kendrick Raphael is one from NC State that I like a lot. That I know there's a previous connection with FSU. Now I'm not saying they will, but it's like there's certain guys that if you feel like you can't live without, I think they're going to do that. I think that's going to happen with wide receiver. I think that's certainly offensive line. We know they're going to take one, maybe multiple guys, but I think that's why I say the number could be like 4 or 5 or even 6 as far as what they add, to this spring window. But I don't think people need to get locked into just safety or edge. There's a lot of positions where if a guy's there and he's just too good to live without, they're going to aggressively go after him.
Let me unmute myself. That would be interesting at running
Yeah.
back. If they go after a running back, that tells you that some guys are on the way out. Like that's just
Yeah.
basic tea leaf reading. The name is Braxton Feely. Looking at your post on the boards, that's the Boise State defensive lineman, defensive tackle. He had 5.5 sacks last season. That's the guy that you got your eyes on. So Michael has this thread, and it's going really fast right now on Warchant's premium recruiting board. It is also the land of the transfer portal. If you haven't signed up for Warchant.com, do so right now. It's just $1 for your first week, and you picked a good week to sign up if you're signing up today because the portal is now wide open. Florida State already has 3 kids in the portal. There may be more coming this weekend and into the next week. Take a look around. Enjoy the largest FSU fan community in the business and the best intel in the business. Michael, we really appreciate the time, and good luck to your phone and to your schedule this week as the portal keeps on going.
Yeah, it'll be very active. Before I go, I just want to let people know, like, this is something that, probably every hour or 2 hours, we're going to have stuff. Certainly going to have features coming up. He asked me players. Philip Lee is another one that's a defensive end from Jacksonville that originally from Jacksonville, that there's certainly some interest from what I hear early on. So like I said, this is going to be a daily thing, an hourly thing. So stay tuned to PRB. It'll be pinned at the top, guys. So any questions you don't have to ask if there's some information going on with this guy. It's going to be pinned at the top. You'll see it all in our portal updates, and we got portal threads that you could talk about and ask me questions. So we're gonna be on it. We'll be around, and if you need anything, go in there. And for now, I'm gonna check out, and I'm gonna let Ira take us home.
Here it is. We flipped the batting order tonight here on the Smash. Joining us in 15 seconds after a message from our sponsor, State Farm agent Russ Forrest, is managing editor Ira Schafel. Michael, thank you so much for the time.
You got it.
We'll be right back here on Warchant TV.
Contact Russ Voris for an auto quote today.
There he is. What's good, Ira? How's it going tonight on a smashing Wednesday?
It's good, man. How are you doing?
Man, I'm good. I'm getting ready to swing the sticks tomorrow. It should be a good time in the morning. But we have many items to discuss here over the next half an hour on the Wednesday Smash presented by State Farm agent Russ Forrest. And Ira, I saved the best part for you because we're going to brag about Russ Forrest in this moment, supporting 3 entire states in these United States, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. If you have any insurance needs, Russ Forrest is the guy to call, not only because he's an expert in the field and he can give you answers, and so can his staff. But he's a diehard Nole just like you. Ira, I think we're going to be getting texts over the next week of who's going to enter the portal. Are we losing this kid? Are we going to get this kid? Russ is as dialed in as everybody here on Warchant TV. So if you want to support one of your own, support our friend Russ Voorhees.
Yeah, and he's got those offices, like you said, over in Jacksonville. So if people living in that area or up in the Southeast Georgia, if you want to come down to Jacksonville, you can talk to them in person, get that personal touch, or you can go to the website. They make it very convenient. You can request information online or call the numbers. And again, if it's Florida, Georgia, or Alabama, all of your insurance needs backed by State Farm. Russ is a great guy, great Nole. And if you do reach out to him, if you ask for information, let him know you heard about him on the Smash and you're an FSU fan, because I'm not saying he's going to get you a better rate. I don't know if he's going to do that, but he'll be very thankful to help you, and he'll talk a little Florida State football with you.
I, too, am a customer of State Farm agent Russ Voorhees. So if you are, let us know in the chat, and make sure to tell him Warchant sent you. If you're listening on the podcast, his name is his website, russvorhis.com, russvorhis.com. Ira, we've discussed this a little bit on the Jeff Cameron show. I know on Headlines you've had a lot of discussions about spring camp, but it does seem like in the last week Mike Norvell has perked up a little bit and gotten a little bit more of the response he was looking for out of his roster. Just since we last spoke 8-9 days ago on the Smash, what do you think about what you've heard from Mike Norvell and things out of Florida State's camp?
Yeah, one of the things that's interesting about it is I think people, and we're guilty of this in the media, when a coach says something or makes a comment or answers a question one way, and maybe you get a sense that they're not happy with something, I think we blanket the whole team with that. Or when something's good, like we blanket the whole team with that. The reality is you got 100 dudes out there and they're all at different stages of their careers. And so when he was frustrated, a couple weeks ago, and I do think he was frustrated. I don't necessarily think it was like this whole team, because I think there were some perceptions out on the message boards and people I talked to is like, man, this team's got to get it together. They just went 2-10. How can they not bring it? How can they not play with an edge in the spring? Well, I'm sure most guys do. Most guys are, but it's the ones that aren't that kind of, I think, set him off a little bit. And so when you do have a couple of good scrimmages in a row, good practices in a row, back-to-back days, I think that did get him excited, especially that, that goal line drill. I think that they were really fired up about that. Listen, man, every football coach in the world loves nothing more than a goal line drill or a board drill or something like that, when it's just man on man. I'm coming at you. We're going to see who's the toughest. And when your team responds to that, it's exciting. So, yeah, man, I think they're in a pretty good place right now. I don't think, again, I don't think that the offense is where it's going to be because they still are limited at some positions in terms of who's available. But I do feel like they're feeling pretty good about things right now.
Yeah, it seems that way. And that goal line day, I've been there for one of those. They go into the stadium, and I think they played the Warchant on loop for an hour. Yeah. And as they went to 1st to 10, and it was 9-9. It was outstanding theater. It was awesome to watch. I've often said I hope that they would do that in a spring showcase in the future, because the fans would really get behind that type of drill. Half the stadium would be screwed. The one half would be very, very happy with the drill. But it's a thing to watch, something special to watch, and it seems like they got the response they wanted. So just in your you've covered a lot of these. You're looking for those nuances yourself. It sounds like they're getting healthier and getting some more kids some exposure at this point of camp. Where's your head at right now as you're hearing from Mike Norvell only twice more this camp? But where's your head at in terms of what you're hearing from him and or the coordinators that we've heard from multiple times, either in a press conference setting or in a panel setting? What's your thinking right now, your level of concern or comfort with what you're hearing about Florida State football?
It's hard to say a concern because, again, we're not seeing every practice. And most of the times when we talk to people who are at practices or visited practices, a lot of times they're going to say this guy looked good, or this position group had a nice day. You don't usually hear, oh, this position group's really struggling. I mean, it's not something that people share if they're inside the program, and a lot of times people don't notice it. If you're watching a football practice, and again, we've watched a lot of them. We're not watching them right now, but when you're watching a football practice, generally the things you notice are the good plays, the flash plays. We used to laugh when Jimbo would say, this guy flashed, or Norvell will say, this guy flashed. Well, we do it too when we're at practice, because those are the things you generally see. And And, when they go back and watch film, then they can figure out, oh, the reason that guy flashed was because this guy missed his block or whatever it was. So, I haven't heard anything that's really concerning. I think the thing that I've been encouraged by is some of the players that, in some positions where you needed to hear somebody step up. I feel like we've heard some of those things. For example, the spring Jabril Rawls has had at corner, I think is very encouraging. When he came in 2 years ago, you could see some talent, but he was really skinny. I mean, I think they listed him at 170 then, and I don't know if he was a 170. He was a skinny, just a thin kid. And you just sometimes you wonder, can they put on enough weight? Well, now, man, he looks like a different dude, and he missed a little bit of time, but now he's back. It sounds like he had an interception in Tuesday's practice. So, there's a couple positions like that. I think, the tight ends have been real. I mean, everybody you talk to is really impressed with the tight ends. And the fact that a guy like Chase Lofton, a true freshman, has gotten as many compliments as he has, I think is exciting. I don't know that he's going to be in there mixing it up in the run game yet, but maybe he will. But he certainly is a guy that can go run and catch. And then, I think something we've taken for granted now is that Deuce Robinson is as good as advertised and maybe better. The things, and I know he's been a little limited lately, but going into that, the first couple of weeks, I mean, people are just raving. Everybody you talk to that's been at a practice has raved about Deuce Robinson. I think that's one thing that we kind of have taken for granted at this point, because you see the measurables, he's had production when he was at USC, and we certainly have a connection to his family at Warchant. But no, I think he is maybe exceeded. He has exceeded expectations, not because he's played at a real high level when he's practiced, but also because he's become really a leader of this team, certainly the leader of that wide receiver group. And again, that was a position that really lacked leadership, I feel like, at times the last few years. So, man, I think that there's enough encouraging things on both sides of the ball that I think, I think overall you got to feel some positive vibes coming out of the spring.
It's not something we could talk about a whole lot in the past because of the policy, but Ray on Facebook says injury updates. Hopefully the injury bug has passed. Mike was pretty giving yesterday, and in general, he's been fairly giving, if not giving outright names, then hinting that they're light at certain positions or unable to play certain guys at certain positions. Just where do things stand with any names that you can rattle off? Like, I know, for example, yesterday he finally came out and said that TJ Ferguson was limited for a little while, right? And he might be coming back up to speed, but that offensive line had been banged up. Just it sounds like they're getting more bodies to participate just in time for one more good week of work in spring camp.
Yeah, it does. I think that they've. I feel like they've mentioned that Gunnar Hansen's been back out there, and he's a guy that originally we thought might be out for the entire spring. I think Micah Pettis was in and out of it at different times, but the good thing is, and again, like, we haven't reported on all the injuries because we're not out there, and sometimes it's hard to get that information. But I would say this: I have been told by multiple people that they've really, knock on wood, been very fortunate in terms of the extent of the injuries. And so, you've had some guys, a hamstring here or there, an ankle, a shoulder, but nothing that, is going to require surgery, nothing that's going to keep anybody out. Very few things that are going to keep guys out for an extended period of time into the summer. You'd love to get these spring reps, but it's going to happen. The other thing that gets conflated sometimes, and I know the fans and media also, probably fans especially, sometimes get frustrated when you hear guys are missing spring, and you think, well, what's going on? Like, why are the strength coaches not getting them in shape or whatever it is? We got to remember that a lot of guys, especially older guys, get procedures done after a season, knowing that they don't really have to be out there as much in the spring because they've got to get better for that next season. So you don't want to have the procedure in May where it might affect them all summer. You go ahead and have that procedure in December, and then, maybe they're limited in the spring, but then they're full go for the summer and into fall. And so I think you've got some of that, and a lot of it's what some of these transfers who came in. Squirrel White, when we talked to him, the receiver out of Tennessee, he's been rehabbing a PCL injury in his knee that goes back to Tennessee. I think some of these linemen that are dealing with things are things that go back to their previous school. So it's not ideal, especially putting in a new system on both sides of the ball, but it's not like it's been the the walking wounded out there. I think they've had a lot of guys either come in with things that they had to work through, or it's been relatively minor injuries so far. Again, like I said, knock on wood.
I do want to point to some of the things that we've seen this week in the portal. Michael was just on talking about that. Florida State has 3 players in the portal as we speak here tonight: Trevor Jackson, Jalen Early, and Jordan Scott. As it relates to a receiver coming in, and little did we know, not for very long, Jordan Scott, 3-4 months. I know, Ira, I'm peeling back the curtain a little bit. You had a little bit of fatigue with the previous group of wide receivers. If they weren't ever going to get it done, before last year, why would last year be any different? I remember you saying that. Does it make you at least a little refreshed or hopeful to see that if it isn't a fit, it isn't a fit in Florida State, and maybe the player are going to part quicker, or is that just a singular situation? Well, what do you make of Florida State's activity in the portal so far?
No, man, I'm 1,000%. I feel that way. And listen, I just feel like there are certain positions where it should not take you 4 or 5 years to prove you could play at Florida State. The offensive line, that's one thing, man. Sometimes guys, you got to put on weight and maybe battle some injuries. It's a tough position. And, maybe you develop a little bit later. I feel like running back, receiver, probably DB are positions where, man, if you don't see it in 3 years, if you don't see it in 4 years, what are we doing here? And there was a time, and I almost asked Norvell about this yesterday at the press conference, because I think he's one of these coaches that really wants everybody he signs. And it's a good credit to him. He really wants them to be successful. Like, I think to a fault. He wants them. I signed you. I brought you in here. I want to see you become great. And that's wonderful, and it's admirable. And it was really, but it's a bygone time. And I almost asked him, like, does he miss those days? Because I do feel like you can see now, this was before the Jordan Scott news came out, right? When this was at Tuesday's press conference. I don't think it had come out. It had come out. But we didn't know all the details. But maybe that's why I was thinking about it. But I almost wanted to ask him, does it make him sad a little bit personally that that's not the way you can operate anymore? This really is a business now. These guys are getting paid. They're getting paid handsomely in a lot of cases. And you have that freedom to come and go, and coaches have to operate the same way. And so, the idea of, a few years ago where you had a 5-year, 4 or 5 year guaranteed contract, I think that's gone. And I think Norvell going 2-10 and seeing a lot of the guys he was hoping would turn into something, not ever turn into something. I wonder if that has forced him to say, you know what, we have to go in a different direction. And maybe these coaches, these new position coaches, are doing the same thing. It kind of stinks in one way, because we still think of college athletics. Well, some of us still think of college athletics as college athletics, but I do think it's the way of the world now. And I do think Mike Norvell, you're getting a sense that he's going to start operating that way as well.
It seems that way. The answer to his question, or the question I asked him yesterday about the portal, I saw corporate Mike. I saw somebody who is sitting at the other end of a long conference room table, and he doesn't need the board's approval. You're done. I don't need votes. I have it in my contract. It says I can get rid of you. I love that.
I thought his there have been no surprises was a pretty telling comment.
Yes, and then he added something to it. We're gonna, we root for the kids, or whatever he said. It's essentially that statement of we wish them well in their future endeavors was put at the podium by Mike Norvell. I'm more of a cynical guy when it comes to sports, so I'm glad. I think this is a sign of health. I was hoping that we would see, I'm not talking about dozens of players, in the transfer portal leaving Florida State, but I was hoping to see a little bit more activity than last year, and whispers about the program correcting itself, because we were sitting here a calendar year ago saying, well, they got too many kids. They're going to have to lose at least a handful or 10. It never happened, Ira. So, like, in this case, it seems like they're trying to usher that process along.
Yeah, I think what happened last year was, in Mike Norvell's mind, he was having these harsh conversations. And I think he was telling guys, look, I'm not going to guarantee you're going to play. You're not going to make the NIL money you made in the past, or whatever it was. And I think they had some hard conversations in his mind, but sometimes they don't get the message. And it's like, maybe it's happened to me with a girl in high school or college who was like trying to give me hints. Hey, dude, like, hey, they stop calling or whatever it is, and you just don't get the hint. I think that was happening last spring to Mike Norvell. Like, I think he was having conversations. He thought that they would get the point, and then they wouldn't leave. And I think he was like, all right, well, we'll let them stay. They've got a locker already. They've got a uniform. We'll let them stay. Maybe it'll work out. And, yeah, man, this is not that world anymore. And, maybe 13-0, you feel like you can absorb some of that. I guarantee you, coming off of 2-10, you do not feel like you can absorb that.
Well, if that was the line of thought, I guarantee you that one, if not both coordinators go, what? No, no, this is a waste of time. We need to move on. I'm sorry, but this is now my defense, or this is now my offense. I didn't recruit this kid, and I don't see it. And it's to a degree, that's a sad thing, but this is a business, and they went 2-10 last year, and they need to be quick to punch in so many ways. And to that end, I wonder, Ira, Michael teased that, if Florida State is going to go after a player or two, they will be aggressive. You'll hear their names early in the process when it comes to either trying to bring kids in on visits. But this is also a very expensive period of time in the portal, because the house settlement's been delayed and because kids are trying to cash in one more time. And obviously universities, if there's no cap, some will spend extra and drive up the cost. How aggressive do you hope Florida State is in the portal, or what would be a better sign for you? Bringing in 5 kids or bringing in 1 or 2?
I mean, yeah, man, I'm team more than less. So I'd be great with that. And listen, I think the other thing we need to realize is, past behavior usually is a good predictor of what happens in the future. And I think we've seen anything from this administration and this football coaching staff and this the NIL, the battle's end. They have not been reluctant to spend if they need to spend. And sometimes it's not even, hey, we're tapped out. Oh, well, find some cushions to look under, figure it out, have a car wash, figure it out. We need this player. Think about it, Tom. You've talked to people off the records. How many times have you heard about FSU football in the last 2 or 3 years? Oh man, we'd love to have this guy, but we just can't make it happen. I think if they believe in this goes up the food chain to the powers that be, that this player or these 2 players, whatever it is, can help us win more games and guarantee us 9 wins or whatever it is, then I think, I don't see them tapping the brakes. We haven't seen that a whole lot as of yet. Do they spend as much as some of these other schools, Ohio State or whoever? Maybe not. But in general, if Mike Norvell's wanted a player, they've, for the most part, figured out how to make it happen.
Yeah, I don't think it's one of those deals where they'll spend as much as everybody 1 through 20 in the roster. But I've heard the following statement. It won't be money that stops us from getting this kid more often than, there's just no way, the market's too nuts. Like it's if they really want somebody, there will be times where they go, I don't want him at that price. But if they really want somebody, they will often say money won't be the thing that stops us. He'll just pick the other program because the other program's a better NFL factory, or it's closer to home, or he's got a better relationship with the coaching staff. That's what I hear often. And one thing I'll point out as well, even though I didn't hear anything behind the scenes on this one, 2 plus 2, man. If you're able to flip kids from Ole Miss and Florida and Georgia and get a kid to decommit from LSU, take a couple weeks, and then commit to you after going 2-10 to upgrade a class from the 50s up to a top 20 class, you didn't do that because Mike Norvell found a magical pitch. You didn't do that because Gus Malzahn and Tony White are impressive human beings. You did that because you brought money to the party and you were desperate to spend to make something happen, and you successfully did. So there is more evidence, to your point, not just in the portal, Ira, about if they need to spend, they will go spend.
100%. And it's the exact opposite, unfortunately, probably with men's basketball, because now Luke Laux has done a really good job of kind of raising some money, and the university has put, there is money behind the basketball program in NIL. I think they've got 5 transfers already, 2 or 3 high school kids committed. They're keeping one of their two really talented freshmen. So there is NIL money there. But I've also heard directly that there have been players in the portal over the last couple of weeks that would have blown people away that would have consider coming to Florida State, strongly consider coming to Florida State to play for Luke Laux, but man, they just could not swing it. And that's the difference between football and Florida State football and men's basketball. Like, nobody's telling football no. They will tell men's basketball no. And you made the perfect point also. Yeah, there's sometimes they'll pass on guys because it's just it would distort their whole roster in terms of who's making what at a position or across the board. So it's not like they're going after everybody. But if it fits and they can make it happen, generally in football, they're going to make it happen.
I don't have it good enough to report the exact numbers, Ira, but specifically when it comes to basketball, the whispers are, in addition to what the university is providing, Luke has done a tremendous job at exponentially growing Florida State's NIL pool, but the market for basketball players is absurd. I mean, are you with me on this one? I get that none of this has great ROI. If you're just looking at it as what NIL against, dollars. Basketball is such a ridiculously inefficient market given what you're getting in return in TV revenue. It's nuts what it costs to field a good top 20 roster these days.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of a couple of things, though. I think it's you don't need to have 50 players be good to have a good program. So I think there's a feeling that there's enough good players out there. If you get a couple of them, and Luke Laux said that that's going to be his philosophy when the program's up and running. He's going to, have like a max cap guy, like one, maybe two, when things are rolling, that you really get in that echelon of those big money players. And then it's going to be a drop off. And then there'll be a few guys there. Then there'll be another big drop off. Well, some of these schools will have 4 or 5 of those max contract guys. And so because basketball just means that much to them, they have that much expendable income. But yeah, no, you're right. The return's not there. But also, I think that's the problem with the Big Ten and the SEC compared to the ACC, and why Florida State wants to get out of the ACC so bad is because those conferences are going to have so much money. They got to figure out ways to spend it. So you can't spend it all on football. So they're going to spend it on men's basketball and everything down to track and everything else. So that's, again, one of the reasons Florida State's trying to make something happen.
Well, Cook, I'll respond to this. When did you hear that? A few weeks ago. Look, I'm not going to use the figures, but if you've got a quarter and now you got $1, that's still not a whole lot of money, but you've increased it fourfold. Like, it's just, Florida State isn't operating with a lot at the baseline. So what Luke is doing is just trying to get them to compete somewhere, I think, in the low middle, Ira, and then he believes he's going to develop his ass off to make them a program that's tournament worthy. And I do in the last, go ahead.
No, I'm just going to say real quick, and yeah, we can get some questions maybe. But yeah, no, it's to your point about him going out and getting extra money. Listen, man, every head coach is going to appeal to different people. And there were people that maybe toward the end of Leonard Hamilton's tenure were like, you know what? I don't feel like putting a lot of more money into this because it's probably not going anywhere. But you bring in a new head coach, and then maybe people are lining up to do it. Luke Laux has a ton of relationships, is a player here, coming back around the program. So yeah, there are people who maybe, not that they had anything against Leonard, but maybe they just weren't at the point where they wanted to invest at the end of somebody's tenure, but now they do in Luke Laux. And that's the case with all these guys. I mean, like, if you hire Will Wade, you're going to get people throwing NIL money at it because they think there's going to be success. So, and if Luke has success with what he's doing, then I think you'll see more money come in.
Yeah, it's funny how openly brazen they could be about it. I mean, Luke made a money joke on Monday or Tuesday night. Was it Monday or Tuesday? Monday, at the booster event. And Rick Pitino, when I was living up in New York last year, Ira, he's on the local news channel saying, well, we've got to get our NIL. We've got to get more people spending money. We have a lot of people spending money who didn't go to St. John's. We need St. John's money. And this is like the 6 o'clock news. I'm going, oh my God, what a world we live in now. But I did want to pivot to that, just that booster event the other night in which Florida State had coordinators speak on the football side. Luke Laux had a chance to sit down. Anything that stood out from either of those panel conversations? Michael Alford was also available to speak at that event. Just anything that you heard from those parties, because that seemed like a laid-back setting where the figures were willing to give a little bit more than they were at a press conference with a podium.
Yeah, it was good, and I really appreciate the boosters letting us come film it, so people that weren't either in town or couldn't make it were able to watch the video on our YouTube channel. But yeah, I thought two of the more interesting things were from Gus, and I talked about it a little bit on headlines yesterday, but from Gus talking about Castellanos, I thought he was, he's always been positive about Tommy Castellanos, but I don't feel like he's been like effusive in his praise. But I felt like him telling us, and this is the first time I've heard him say this. If he said it earlier, I missed it. But he said, when I got the job, the first call we made was Tommy Castellanos. And that says a lot, man. And again, for him to say that publicly, I think it's an endorsement of Tommy and what he's done so far. So I think they're really pleased. We've been hearing good things about it, but I thought that was a really impressive endorsement. And he talked more about him as well. People could go watch the video. And then Tony White, I thought his comments in general are always interesting. He's a really good talker. Anytime you get a chance to hear Tony White talk, I suggest you do it. But I thought his comment about that play where in that goal line drill where he called a bad play. Like he put them in a bad play. He knew it as soon as they lined up at the line of scrimmage. Oh man, I made the wrong call. We're not lying. We don't have, I'm sure we don't have everything covered here. But he said two dudes, he didn't say who they were. Maybe we can ask him when we see it next time we see him. But he said there were two guys who just didn't care what the call was, just were determined to beat their block or to get off the ground and go make the play. And they did. They got to stop. And he said that was his favorite play from the scrimmage. And I loved hearing that because I felt like, especially when you're 2-10 and you're losing a lot of football games, I felt like that was a team that looked for excuses to lose. That's what happens. When you start losing, you wait for something bad to happen. You look for excuses to cling on to. And if dudes have the mindset to, I don't care what was called, I have to go make this play, that's awesome. And so that I thought that was something that was worth taking away.
Yeah, the Gus part of it, I totally agree. I haven't heard him say that. Brock was the first guy he talked about. He called him a winner. Then Sperry, he talked about more than Castellanos. So to me, I'm not saying it's a disingenuous comment. What I'm saying is I think he saw some things in the 3 weeks that he's been vetting him where he says, all right, well, now I'm willing to share on a stage in a public setting that I backed this guy. I wanted to see it out of him in the practice setting. So that means that the returns must be good during practice. Now, Florida State has 2 more practices to go tomorrow, and availability in the evening, then on Saturday afternoon for the final scrimmage of spring camp. And so we'll have the coverage for you here on Warchant TV, warchant.com, all of that coverage. What the kind of things are you going to be looking for as the week rounds out, Ira, and anything that you'd like to promote before we sign off this evening?
Well, I think tomorrow is going to be pretty limited. It sounds like it's a helmet-only practice. I don't think they're going in pads tomorrow. And so they've been having some real physical practices, and then Saturday will be their final scrimmage. So tomorrow I think is going to be a little less enlightening. Unless maybe, they get a couple of guys back. That's been trending. The last couple of practices, we've been seeing some guys coming back. And then Saturday's it, man. That's the last day. It's the last scrimmage. I'm a little bit surprised. They haven't made Kevin Sperry live at all. Not that I'm a huge fan of doing that. That's what got Chubba Purdy hurt and kind of sidetracked things for him. But it is something that Mike Norvell's traditionally done. So it's interesting they haven't done. I wonder if they may do that on Saturday with him. But otherwise, I just, every practice you hear that Tommy didn't have a lot of turnovers, I think is a huge win, because that's just going to be in everybody's mind going into this season. Is he going to take care of the football? I think he's done a pretty good job of it overall. The one scrimmage we were at, he did have the 2 interceptions, but neither one was egregious. So, I think that's a big thing. More about the, guys coming back from injuries. It would be huge if some of these offensive linemen who've been coming back get through 2 or 3 practices, maybe get through a scrimmage, and it's fine. Because this would be a big week for those guys. Look, spring, you could say 75 for spring. You miss 75% of spring. Well, it's 4 weeks. It's really 4 or 5 weeks. If you get one full weekend, it's a big deal. So I think that getting some of those guys back and hearing that they went through the whole week would be a really positive. And yeah, we got plenty more coverage. As Michael said, I heard him before I came on. He does have a piece that's coming out tomorrow morning about high school recruits that are trending up and trending down for Florida State. And then Corey wrote a story about Javen Boggs, the wide receiver, who we got the clarification. I don't know if you heard. It's Javen Boggs, not Javon. I've been calling him Javon for 6 months, but it's Javen Boggs. We spoke to him yesterday, man. That dude is super impressive. I mean, not just a sharp kid, and we've heard great things about him in practice, freshman wide receiver, but just you can tell he thinks he's a dude. And I feel like for him to think that after 3 weeks of spring camp tells you he's proven he's a dude. And so Corey's got a story on him. As soon as we get done with this, I'm going to post that at warchant.com. And if you're a subscriber, you can go read it.
Yeah, that's one of those things. You don't always have to be talkative for the media to like you. You don't, because Javen Boggs, for a few questions yesterday, essentially had the yes. I understand why you asked that question, but that is a ridiculous question. I can play. I am up to speed at this sport. Trust me. I run good routes. I'm a good player, and I'm good with that energy. That's fine, man. We've heard a lot of bluster. This kid wants to be about it. So hopefully, as we trend into fall camp, you continue to hear more good things about Javen, but the behind-the-scenes whispers about him have been good, not just about on-field performance, but about commitment level to the program. So looking forward to that story. There will be breaking news tomorrow, everybody, because basically the entire Warchant staff will be golfing in the morning. So that means that there is most certainly going to be some sort of breaking news. Stay tuned for that. We'll break it from the golf course if we need to. Maybe we'll go live from the 19th hole at some point tomorrow morning when we're out there for the charity event at Capital City here locally. I see we have a late contribution from Hayden, who says, if theoretically there was a bad apple in this bunch, would it be someone who came in this offseason? Boy, you're fishing, aren't you, Hayden? You are fishing for an answer there. I would just say keep your eye on the portal. All right, just keep your eye on the portal, and we'll see what happens over the next week. Eddie, thank you very much for the contribution. He says, Wednesday Smash, what a treat. Go Noles. See you at the golf tournament tomorrow. Eddie, we appreciate you. And we thank Michael Langston for stopping by tonight to talk portal coverage. Remember, $1 for your first week at warchant.com. Head over there right now to sign up. And if you want to be a member of Warchant TV, all you got to do is hit the join button below here. You get some emojis, advanced access to certain videos. Certain videos will be exclusive over the time of your membership. It's easy. It's one click. But the main shop is over at warchant.com. Anything else, Ira? Is there one more thing tonight? Do we get a 2-for-1? No? We're done?
No, I think I'm good, man. I think I'm good. Thanks for holding it down, and thanks to Michael for helping us out, and thanks to Russ Voorhees.
There we go. Thanks to Russ Voorhees. Michael, thanks to Ben Spicer behind the scenes. He's director of the program, and to all of you, have a wonderful evening. Keep it locked to warchant.com for the latest out of the portal in Florida State football. Good night, everybody.